Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to my two predecessors for a couple of great presentations. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about some of the ways that some of the technologies that we deal with are going to interact with the arts over the next generation. I don't have to tell this group that we're on the verge of an entirely new environment, of which AR is just one element. The new environment is really going to have a huge effect on basically every human endeavor, and especially the arts and storytelling. First, what does this, it does work, okay. What does this coming environment consist of? The new environment will probably comprise what we currently call AR, VR, Internet of Things, sensor networks, robotics, nanotechnology, autonomous vehicles, intelligent structures in cities, all glued together with what we currently call artificial intelligence, and other technologies as well. A lot of the terminology we use today is probably going to be quaintly antique in a generation, including augmented reality, as this just becomes a part of what we perceive as reality. As the people in this room know very well, this is going to permeate areas that will have to play out in order for us to even imagine where it's going to go. In addition to these technologies, over the next generation, I see the computer is exploding and landing on the walls and every surface, including ourselves. In a sense, every object will be aware in some sense and interoperable with other objects. The built environment will in many cases be the backdrop against which sophisticated illusion, transplanted elements from the real world, the physical world rather, play out. Our cities, our homes, our vehicles, public spaces will be an integral part of what we today call computing, quaintly. As with many technologies, as they become more advanced, they appear to disappear. Walking down a street in 2040 might look a lot like today, but unless you're privy to somebody's private enhanced point of view. But the ultimate piece of this new environment is the physical us. It's the human body. Connecting the body physically to the virtual environment has a ton of possible applications, many of which are being explored now. Right now, the most useful and obvious roles are biometrics, being explored and commercialized, heart monitors, and so forth. But with the human being part of the network, strange and wonderful things are possible. For artists, there is an unprecedented opportunity to integrate the body and the art, to have the art adapt to physical changes, have the ongoing narrative modified to accommodate any number of real-time facts about the viewer, user, perceiver. The degree of interactivity could adjust according to geographical location, the user's health, state of mind, and any number of other arbitrary factors. Creators of all art forms, especially including art forms that don't have names yet, that don't really exist yet, are going to have a new opportunity in this environment, arguably unlike anything in history. The coming environment, this new canvas, will offer the artist, the filmmaker, the musician, the storyteller, and other as yet uncategorized artists to incorporate the entire environment into their work. The built environment, the human body, sensors and aware objects, sensory illusion on its own, or integrated with the physical world. This is the new artist's canvas. But it's more than a canvas. The word canvas, in fact, restricts the possibilities by relying on an old metaphor. This is a complete environment in which we operate. It's not a canvas, it's a new kind of operating system for creating canvases, in a sense, and other creative platforms. As much as the word revolutionary is overused for everything, this really is revolutionary. On the level of commercial, readily available, safe electric power. So in addition to the incredible multi-channel possibilities for the experienced developer and the storyteller in this coming environment, there's an additional characteristic of this new meta canvas that offers unprecedented power for the artist. I remember many years ago going to the Museum of Broadcasting in New York City, and they put us in a theater and played, among other things, a collection of ads, TV ads from the 50s and 60s. This was before all this stuff was readily available online. And the audience was doubled over laughing. It was hilarious. I remember thinking, how could anybody have taken this stuff seriously? But the contemporaneous audiences for these ads lived in the context of those ads, just as we live in the context of equally absurd ads we see today and accept as a matter of course. It becomes funny when a frame is put around it, when it's taken out of its context and presented on its own. We can't help but look at a framed object differently than we look at the same object unframed. Much of modern art, starting in the 60s, is implicitly based on this assumption, as one is forced to look at commonplace objects in a new light when they're framed, when they're removed from their context and objectified. You could argue that it all began with photography. Much of the creative work of the past 30 years in various fields is characterized by the detachment, ironic sensibility, disdain for earnestness, and collagism, if you will, that derives from manipulating the frame and recontextualizing objects. Well, this new environment we're talking about has no frame. Immersion is by definition frameless. As immersive experiences, they're almost bound to defy irony in a sense. It makes it impossible to detach from our surroundings, which includes us. It makes all of these basic assumptions about the creator and the audience open for discussion. In the coming environment, I see art as inhabitable. It's only a matter of time before the creative communities think through the infinite possibilities of this reality that we'll begin to see entirely new art forms. Over the past few years, we've seen the creative community increasingly embrace the possibilities of this emerging new medium. Game developers are in the forefront. An increasing number of filmmakers in Hollywood are embracing VR as a new compelling narrative medium. It's almost impossible that it's almost inevitable that new short and long forms, as well as game-like open-ended forms, will emerge. Just as the power of a good TV series is enhanced when binge-watched, complete immersion in a well-defined VR Albuquerque or northern New Jersey or 80s Washington, D.C., where the action takes place, could be overwhelmingly compelling. A TV series could become a place, a 50-hour movie without episode breaks that the viewer could enter from time to time, part game, part simulation, part TV show, part something we have no words for yet. So what about live performance, or what appears to be live performance? I was talking with a person who works in theater on the East Coast and is very interested in adding augmented and virtual reality to her work. And we talked about how in the physical world, we're always trying to create an intimacy and performance between the performer and the audience. One way to do that is traditionally in theater in the round, where basically you have a circular stage and the audience sits around it. But these technologies allow for crazy inversions, and we came up with the term of theater in the donut, which is basically that we are the whole and the donut happens around us. So that's one of the types of radical recasting of our assumptions that these technologies make possible. But as is often the case, the very people who are best able to do the most pioneering work are sometimes hamstrung by assumptions that are inextricable from their expertise. I imagine it must be very difficult for some filmmakers who have a honed expertise in telling stories in the film medium to throw all their organizing principles, to the wind and rethink everything they know. This evolution of the arts will probably play out over a generation or two, a few decades, as the most compelling work is increasingly done by artists who have started with the assumptions of the new medium. The first virtual natives are appearing, the small kids who are playing with dad's Oculus. And over the next 20 years, they will approach sensory storytelling in ways we can't yet imagine. In a sense, the artistic wildcard is interactivity in the broadest sense. We've seen over the past 40 years the foothills of this coming mountain range in the form of, in the music world, for example, remixing, sampling, recombining, which reflects a cultural point of view about the relationship between the artist and the listener, enabled by technology. This cultural sort of softening up of the population has primed us for approaching a virtualized world and its creative works as not having such rigid boundaries as in the past, in terms of forms, ownership, intellectual property, random collaboration, incorporation of other work, and so on. But in terms of real interactivity, where you're not only in the middle of the action, but you're also affecting it like a game, or at the most extreme, you're changing the story by your actions. In an interactive narrative, think of it as a house that you can walk through. Everybody enters the lobby, everybody ends up on the roof, but there are many rooms in between where you can get to the same place, albeit with different scenes and experiences along the way. In fact, that's just really the beginning. Our concept of a story could become much more liquid in the future. In a way, a story has a deep structure and a surface structure, just as many Hollywood movies are basically retellings of Shakespeare plays. Storytellers might evolve to, who knows, focus on the underlying story and leave much of the surface to the person experiencing the story based on a variety of factors. Regardless of the skin a user might wrap around an underlying story, the same story is told. This is just one simple way our notions of and techniques for storytelling might evolve in response to this new environment. But then there's another axis, point of view, which this environment can also make uncomfortably liquid for the innocent eyes of 2015. What about a story that changes in even fundamental respects depending on your point of view? The story from Jimmy's point of view might be quite different from Lucy's point of view, even to the point of the moral lessons of the experience. The plot could change, the characters involved could change. In effect, there could be multiple movies happening on the same set, so to speak, at the same time, and your point of view would determine which story or which piece of it you experienced. So how are these experiences organized and delivered automatically in response to viewer, user experience or input? What we today call games can serve as the intelligent structure of experiences in any use of this environment. Games can systematize, measure, encourage or discourage, integrate and coordinate a variety of inputs from a variety of sources in real time. Games, in a sense, are the story that underlies a content-rich experience, like what we're talking about. Game developers rightly see themselves as pioneers in VR and AR, which is fair. But I'm convinced they might not even appreciate how valuable and crucial games and developers will be to this new environment, and those who create and tell stories within it. In a sense, games will be the structure. AI will inform and modify the structure, and the story is what the user will perceive. A person might be involved in multiple games on an ongoing basis, and these games might be programmed to learn and interact with each other over time. Now, this vision and these potentials require a level of interoperability that flattens all obstacles to seamless experiences for which we don't yet have names. So when I talk about interoperability, it's not only the conventional types, hardware and software, but also other things, content, games, and then that content necessarily involves artists, filmmakers, writers, and game developers, all storytellers. It should involve all these people really in the early phases of the technology development, like right now. In addition, this environment will serve as the basis for education, commercial activities, business, day-to-day life, and so forth. It's all permeating. It opens up legal and moral questions of identity, privacy, intellectual property, and I suggest we cast the net wide in the discussions that form the basis of this new environment. Let's crowdsource this revolution. Let's bring together the best minds from every field and create an environment that serves everyone notably including the artists, inventors, and storytellers who serve as our collective voice and our collective imagination. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. We have time for some questions, especially since this is the last talk of the day.
Hi there. Hi. I was at the VR conference 2 weeks ago, SVVR, and there was a great storytelling event there. It strikes me that mise-en-scène is what we used to call it in cinema, but with VR and AR, we might call it mise-en-experience.
It's good. I like that. That's very good. Never heard it.
Other questions for Jay?
All right,
Thank you very much.